Hello and welcome to the second in our series of the Beastiary podcast, or Cod-Past, or whatever it is that I'm deciding to call it at this time. As you know, this is my attempt to try and interact with the community a little bit more and keep everybody up to date as to what I'm planning, etc. In addition to also just, trying to produce more content. It's something I hope you enjoy. Before we get into it, what you're seeing in the background is sort of a reenactment of my production of the werewolf video. It's not exactly what I did, and it's just a general idea, but I hope the illustrative design thingy of it all gives you some insight into my general creative process. Unfortunately, I don't show you all of the video layers, and it is a little bit laggy because I had to record it on an okay laptop, but trying to do video editing and screen recording at the same time munches a lot of computer cycles, so it's not the best video. But if you can look past that, it's I hope you enjoy it. Mind, it's just to entertain your eyes. So if you guys are busy, or if you're driving or whatnot, that's perfectly fine to turn your resolution down and listen to this in the background. Okay, so without further ado, let's get to it. I'd like to start today with I say today, I like to start this with a bit of comments that we've gotten recently. And I'm actually quite pleased to say that the amount of comments that we've received is increasing. Particularly with the werewolf video, and actually a lot of older videos are getting a lot more comments as well. I'm honestly surprised. In this last month, I'd say it's the most comments in general that we've received from a single unit of time. How could I explain? In the entire month, we've received more comments than we usually do in the months, if that makes sense. It's a bit odd. Yeah, just a lot of comments, basically. But anyway, to get to it. Starting from the bottom, I have a comment by Spine Cricket that says that he rather enjoyed the vampire video and that he wants to write a story on Wattpad. And this actually brings me to a general thing that I wanted to talk about. If our videos inspire any of you guys to do anything or create something, etc., please let us know and do share it in the comments. You can always message me on whatever video you were inspired by, or you can send a message via the creator messages, private message thingy. I'm not exactly sure how that works, and some people seem to be able to do it, but I don't know myself. But again, if you find the stuff, please let us know, and I'd be happy to share it with everybody in the Cod-Pasts here. Continuing with the comments, we've got GT Youth 7 that says they love my voice, so much appreciated, dear person. I don't think my voice is all that entertaining, but, I sound very squeaky to myself, but I suppose we all sound different to ourselves in some ways. Mostly because I am very much aware that our voices tend to reverberate inside our own skulls, adding a bit more baritone to everything. So if I remove the baritone that I hear of my own speech, I imagine that I sound like kind of like a mouse person talking. But thank you nevertheless for the comment. And everybody else who complimented me on the voiceovers, etc., thank you so much. In fact, there was let me bring up the comment. There was someone called Jenna Bernardo who expressed similar opinions. But going on, we've got also the Bull Girl that says they've watched each and every video and they think it's the best, and that the werewolf is also their favorite fantasy. Actually, the werewolf is probably one of the most popular videos we've done by far. I have no idea why. I would have expected the vampire to have been more, how could I say, a bit more entertaining, a bit more clicking with people in general, because of all of the vampire media that we've been exposed to as of late. But I suppose part of the reason that vampires are not as popular is because we've actually been overexposed to them, and thus the werewolf, its natural counterpart, has become significantly more popular. So, yeah, great, I'm glad people enjoyed it. I'm also quite glad that I chose to do the new opening for it. It was very interesting to see people responding to the new opening. So yes, please let us know what you think. Okay, next we've got a comment by Descent View that wants to suggest a video regarding witches and warlocks, or sorcerers and witch doctors. And actually, This is a very interesting idea. It is something that we've been considering, that is to say, witches and warlocks, etc. The main reason for this is because I want to actually do an entire video on magic. Magic is quite difficult to reify, though, I must say, because, how does it work? If you look at a lot of the magic in a lot of fantasy, it's all very different. You've got the fairy magic, which follows a lot of logic, well, how could I say, not even logic, just common sense. Of course the person turns into a donkey. If you pull his tailbone, that will make a tail grow, etc. And then you've got the more systematic magic, like in Harry Potter, where there's a pattern or a rhythm. In the case of Harry Potter, saying a lot of Latin words, etc. And this actually sort of extends to the dragons in Skyrim, and also somewhat to Eragon, where the words that you're saying are the essence of that concept, and therefore, because they're the essence, they invoke that idea. So magic is very varied, but at the same time very difficult. Essentially what it is taking the closed system of the universe, the closed energy system of the universe, and inserting additional energy into it. And obviously the person who's casting the spell or doing the magic, etc., is channeling this energy in whatever form they so choose. There was a very interesting version of magic in the Laundry Files series by Charles Stross, which is something I highly recommend you guys check out. In the Laundry Files, Charles explains that magic is an extension of mathematics. So basically, whenever you perform any theorem or complete any kind of mathematical operation, other intelligences or other beings in other universes sort of take notice of this, and they start to leak into our world. And because of this, the energy that they're made of or that they're using, etc., gets channeled into our universe, and we can use it for whatever reason. There was a very interesting example of that in that same series with the Gorgons. Yes, the Gorgons, where basically a tumor on the occipital lobe of someone's brain basically causes a quantum tunneling effect to turn a certain amount of carbon atoms into silicon, and therefore turning the person into stone, rather explosively, I might say. It was a very interesting series, and it's still ongoing, so again, as I say, I highly recommend it if you want a very systematic look at magic. Although I will say, I personally prefer the more fairy kind of magic, the kind that you don't explain with any kind of system. But, each to his own, etc. Regarding the witch and warlock video that I intend to do, I'm not sure exactly how I will explain magic, but that's just generally what I'm thinking about discussing. There was also another comment asking a very similar thing by Victoria Mistopheles, saying that they want to see witches and warlocks, but also perhaps fairies. And I should mention that fairies are a creature that we have been considering to make a video on for a while, but it's always just been sitting in the background. Especially after I started taking recommendations, the fairies fell really much by the wayside because I would have preferred to have focused on what people have asked. So by asking this, Victoria, you're definitely going to see a fairy video, so thank you for doing that. And the same goes for any other creature that you guys want to see. If there's something you want to see, please tell me, because there's a good chance that I have it on the back burner, but just haven't gotten around to it because I'm focusing on what you guys specifically request. In fact, the centaur, which has been requested a while ago and will probably be the next video, is a creature that I had started work on, I don't know, about a year ago? Year and a half ago, but I just never got around to finishing it because, requests, etc. And also, I'm guilty. I was a bit lazy and let the videos fall behind in the regularity of their upload, so that is kind of a problem. But yes, please do look forward to centaurs, witches, and fairies. There was also one more thing, but I can't remember exactly. I'm not looking at my list of things to do, so at least those three I can promise will come in the future. As always, I'm trying to produce one of these videos every month at minimum, so if it's just those three, fairies will probably be done in October, provided I can keep the schedule going. So yeah, look forward to it. Continuing with the comments. Where were we? Oh yes, we were looking at the fairies, etc. The next comment right below the request for witches and warlocks was by Fairy Berserk, saying that leviathans are considered a mix between whales and snakes specifically, and that they cannot say that whales are entirely to the name of the leviathan, as their myth also consists that weapon. I'm sorry, I'm reading this rather poorly. Consists that weapons couldn't pierce them. Okay, so that weapons couldn't pierce the skin of the leviathan, etc. And they also mentioned that there have been whalers for an extremely long time. Basically, just to give everybody a bit of context for this, the Leviathan video discusses that the word Leviathan actually refers to Jewish, well, is the Yiddish word for snake, not snake, sorry, the Yiddish word for whales. And as a consequence, we can sort of assume that all whales are actually leviathans in reality. If the legend says that they cannot have their skin pierced by any kind of weapon, we cannot then imagine that whales are a leviathan because, well, there have been whalers for a very long time. Which is a very interesting point, I must say. Oftentimes, we find that the legends will diverge very dramatically, as I'm sure all of you have seen, from the original creature upon which it is based. Of particular note is the basilisk, where a spitting snake of some sort somehow turned into a murder-inducing sight monster thing. And I certainly believe the same is true for the whale and the leviathan. Although it must have been quite interesting for those early peoples of Europe, Indo-Europe, to have actually seen whales and conducted whaling exercises, etc. Because, as you guys well know, technologies for hunting whales, etc. were rather underdeveloped. Well, actually, no. I shouldn't say that, because they haven't really changed all that much, but our seafaring technologies have developed. As a consequence, people didn't encounter whales as much as we do nowadays, because most of the time people were stuck along the coast in ancient eras, but occasionally people would encounter whales. Not to mention also seeing beached whales. It must have been quite an impressive sight for people who perhaps didn't even go out to sea at all. We also forget one more thing, that a lot of our modern fantasy has desensitized us to all of these fantastical creatures, to all of the amazing things in the world. We consider whales to be relatively large in size, but not dramatically huge, not epically huge, because we've seen movies with titanic creatures and great monsters that will consume entire worlds, etc. We can blame Lovecraft for that, basically. But the point is that when we've had so much fantasy and so much fiction to desensitize us to amazing things, we kind of lose touch with what ancient peoples found really fascinating and really amazing and awe-inspiring. And I suppose that's one of the lessons we can take away from the Leviathan. It's that cultures change, perceptions change, and what we consider to be big today might be rather small tomorrow. This is also true for the behemoth, where, elephants are considered rather large, but not absolutely monstrously huge. We can't exaggerate an elephant's size in modern times as we could back then. So, consider that when watching these videos. It's a very interesting thought experiment. Thank you for that, Fury Berserk. I said Fury Berserk before, didn't I? My apologies. Next is Great Sarah Kirby. Thank you for your comment, I should say, Great Sarah Kirby. Great Sarah Kirby mentions that they're rather sick of top 10 videos that copy-paste data, etc. And they appreciate the homework that I do on these things. And they want to see a giant video. That was the next one. Yes, there we go. So, yeah, giants are before fairies and witches. I'm sorry, guys, but Great Sarah Kirby, oh my gosh, your name is so difficult. Great Sarah Kirby requested giants prior to anybody requesting witches and fairies, so do look forward to that, Great Sarah Kirby. But going back to what they were saying, thank you so much for your comment. I really do try to put as much effort as I can into the videos. Alas, I am somewhat disappointed about the werewolf video, but I'll get to that shortly. But yes, we do try, so thank you for your comment. And if there's anything that you guys would like to see in the videos, any topic about these creatures that you'd like to see us cover, do let us know. The 4 topics that we have now are generally there just as a to try and make these things complete. But if there's another topic that you'd like to see, or something that you would like me to mention consistently in the videos, do tell me, and I'll be sure to try and add it in. Going on to the next comment, I got quite a few comments from Jenna Bernardo. I mentioned you before. I'm very glad that you like the videos, and I'm quite happy that you consider yourself a fan. It's greatly appreciated. But yes, without further ado, let's get on to my main topic for this Cod-Past, which is the werewolf. Since the werewolf was the most recent video I did, I wanted to cover some aspects and some ideas of this video, and further elaborate on some things that I noticed while researching this creature. Obviously, these will be ideas that I wasn't able to mention, so I hope that they fill your need to know more. Firstly, I'd like to talk about the things that I did technically in this video. I purchased a green screen, and I've started using a lot of chroma key work, as I'm sure a lot of you noticed. I fell in love with the shadow art that was done in the chroma key stuff. You'll notice that there's a lot of still images with the chroma key put on the front of it to sort of turn it into a video, and I even made a few of these things myself. If you watch the werewolf video, there is a scene with a madman raving around in a cell. That is a composite of a video of the moon that has been tinted red, placed on a chroma keyed image of a cell, a still image of a cell, with a chroma keyed version of myself, like flopping around on my bed, well, against my bed. It was very, it was a lot of work for a very short part of the video, but I found that it is actually very useful, and was actually even able to create a nice effect where I managed to create a bit of a silhouette to get the moon to shine on it. Okay, to be honest, that was unintentional, but when I noticed it, I really liked it, so I didn't touch it. I didn't fix it, I should say. So do take a look at the video, and you'll see it. I think it's about halfway. I think it's in the origin part of the werewolf. I'll probably put up some kind of annotation or something to guide you to that part of the video if you're interested. However, going on with the things that I rather enjoyed about this video was also the ability to change things up. I really enjoyed the new opening, and I'm glad to see that what comments I have received of the new opening have been rather positive. My idea with these openings is to have a background, a video clip, that generally illustrates the environment in which the creature exists. So for the werewolf, this was a full moon. And actually, there was a lot of full moon imagery in this video, my word. But with the next video, it's going to be a completely different background part to that, and etc, etc, etc for the videos that follow. Hopefully with that it'll create a lot of visual variety, because I was kind of getting sick of seeing those consistent brown backgrounds with slightly different shapes on them in my video list thing. So that's also part of the reason that I wanted to do that. So again, glad that some of you like it. However, as to the things I didn't quite like about this video, well, some parts of it were a bit rushed, particularly at the end, where I tried to speak very clearly and very carefully to communicate an idea very straightforward, but also, in a non-difficult manner. It sounds like I have cut a whole bunch of separate audio pieces together in a hodgepodge of crappy audio, and I really don't like that happened. I'm going to try and speed things up with my creation, but I don't want to have these horrible audio parts, especially because the core engagement of my videos, as I see it, is not the visuals as such, but rather the audio. So I want to have the audio as smooth and clean as possible. So my apologies. If there is time, I will try and fix it. But as it stands, I do need to move on. Parts of the reason for this audio hiccup is because I tried to put a more solid deadline on when I would produce the video. And this means that I kind of had to, at some point just say, okay, no, it's done. We've got to move on. Let's put a stamp on it, etc. If I'd given myself more time, then I could have perhaps fixed it. And to be honest, these excuses are a little bit crappy because, that's exactly what they are. They're just excuses. When I had started the videos, I had actually been producing a video every week, and my audio was improving. Admittedly, I was hiding in a cupboard to record the sound away from any kind of echo. This was before I knew anything about, audio recording. But I felt that I was able to keep a consistent kind of quality with that, even though I was working quite hard, actually, on making these videos. So, I really don't feel it's much of an excuse. So, please, if there's anything that's screwy like that, jump on me. Tell me that it's crap. Tell me what I need to fix, because I want to try and make these as good as I can. I do take pride in this work, even though it is not my main occupation. It is something that I don't want to do something half-assed. And although I'm not a professional video editor, etc., I do want to try and at least aim for that kind of thing, though I may miss. But yeah, generally that was my feeling about the negative sides of the werewolf. Anyway, moving on from that, some of the more interesting things about the werewolf that I wasn't able to include in the video. Because, surprisingly enough, this video could have rather easily turned into a 25 or even 30-minute long video. The main thing that I want to draw attention to is the fact that the werewolf seems to be really a psychological transformation rather than a physical transformation. And although I do mention this in the video, I really wasn't able to emphasize it, to really give this the feeling that it deserved. Because in what I found to be the origin of the werewolf, vis-a-vis berserkers and warriors, etc., I noticed that these were often people that just underwent a psychological alteration. They were often rather testosterone-fueled individuals, etc., so they would, I imagine, be quite hairy people, but I don't think that this connection was really made at all. The psychological changes that we see in people that are werewolves are perhaps the most striking part of it. And we can find this throughout a lot of the myths and legends throughout history. Of particular note is Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, that whole story, which also the Incredible Hulk kind of story, where someone has a rather calm demeanor, but every now and again during some event they turn into a terrible monster. In the case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, the catalyst is alcohol or drugs and whatnot. And in the case of the Incredible Hulk, it's obviously his anger. But in all of these situations, the person undergoes a dramatic physical transformation that accompanies primarily their psychological transformation. In the case of the werewolf, we see the person becoming enraged and just killing everybody in town. You might actually be able to sort of make a connection between this and the flashbacks that war veterans have that turns them into, well, I wouldn't say turns them into, but that causes them to become irrational or exceedingly aggressive, despite the fact that there's no reason, no threat that they're immediately facing. And this is often actually accompanied by, as I mentioned before, alcoholism. So you have Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde explaining this whole alcoholism being, or should I say drug addiction, being connected to some kind of psychological trauma or some kind of psychological transformation. And even in the case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, the actual physical transformation is very minimal. The person doesn't become a really hulking monster as such. He's, I can't remember the exact words that describe it, but the actual person himself Dr. Jekyll remains rather sane and is still able to write, while as Mr. Hyde, he's not completely out of it, but he is a rather different person. He is quite aggressive, he is dangerous. With the Incredible Hulk, it's more a rage-induced type of thing, which I suspect is PTSD from, supposed to be PTSD from experiencing horrible exposure to, nuclear testing. That kind of thing kind of changes you. Although, what is quite interesting is that I imagine certain amounts of radiation exposure could change one psychologically. So that is perhaps another explanation for the Incredible Hulk. But anyway, I digress away from the werewolf. The point is that a lot of these modern transformation myths are originally from the werewolf. We can trace them back to the werewolf, that is. Another interesting thing was that the berserker, the thing that I pointed to as being the origin of the werewolf, was actually quite a varied description of people. Description of warriors, I should say. If you go and look online and do a little bit of digging, you'll find a lot of conflicting information. I sort of allude to this by saying that sometimes this was just interpreted, the word berserker, I mean, was just interpreted as being someone who fought without any clothing on, ergo bare skin. But at other times, it was an individual who actually transformed into a bear or some kind of horrible animal. And this sort of carried over a little bit into the werewolf. I wasn't entirely sure if this was the exact origin, but I did have to make a definite statement. I felt I had to make a definite statement. So even though I can't 100% say that this is definitely the origin, I do think that this is the most plausible origin, especially considering that, well, the werewolf myth is very difficult to trace. And I think that you can find the origin of a lot of what we call therianthropes, people who turn into some kind of animal, in the berserker. A lot of therianthropes are people who turn into, like, bears or occasionally horses, actually. And you'll often find similar things like in the Animorphs, that old book series and eventual television series. They all probably come from this whole idea of people transforming when enraged and when in battle. And this is actually quite an interesting metaphor that we find in history, because a lot of the time people will be described as fighting with a bestial strength or a bestial rage, and we often associate being some kind of animal with being able to express oneself in an aggressive manner. And that's me saying it very politely, express oneself in an aggressive manner, but you know what I mean, just conduct yourself in a really aggressive way. And that the fact that we associate our rage and our anger and our violence with being an animal is a very interesting aspect of our social psychology. I want to try and do a bit more research as to why we make this kind of association, but if anybody has any ideas, do mention in the comments. I would be very interested to see what you say, because it is quite odd that we think of animals as being inherently aggressive. Because if you think about it, a lot of animals try to avoid conflict, even predators. The only time where predators actually engage in any kind of really harmful activity is when they're hunting. And even then they do it very cautiously. And because what they're hunting is usually a large animal, they don't do it that often. Even deer that are fighting each other, stags, etc., the whole point of their fighting is that they don't want to injure each other as such. They just want to express dominance. There is some kind of injury that does take place, of course, but it's not actual killing or violence or any kind of, grievous bodily harm. Because, well, these animals don't want to be put in a position where they actually have to carry wounds that will actually end their lives. So a lot of their fighting tends to be very ritualized. So our impression, our cultural impression of animals and beasts, etc., being aggressive and full of rage is quite inaccurate, actually. So, an interesting topic to explore. The last thing I wanted to mention, that it's quite interesting to see how the werewolf has actually not changed as much as the vampire has over the centuries. The vampire has turned from a walking corpse into a suave seductress, a metaphor for STDs and the like, where the werewolf sort of started as someone who was a warrior and eventually became some kind of horrible curse in Christianity, as I mentioned, and that's where it stayed. They've been made a little bit more suave in the the Twilight novels, that's it. But beyond that, they really haven't done much alteration to they haven't experienced much alteration to their myth, which is, for me, very interesting. Even things like fairies have changed a lot more in the space of time that, we've had fairies, but the werewolf has remained very consistent. And to me, that speaks of them being a very essential creature to our understanding of the world, to our understanding of ourselves more particularly, that we wouldn't really feel the need to change them. Again, going back to our expression of violence, the fact that the werewolf is essentially a human who is also an animal, a human who is as aggressive and as violent as an animal, for a given value of violent and aggressive, tells me that this is really something in our own character that we're trying to acknowledge, that we're trying to come to terms with on a near constant basis. So I think that the werewolf is definitely a creature that's going to be with us for a very long time. My comment at the end of who knows what form the werewolf might take in the future is kinda incorrect. The werewolf, I doubt, will change very much. Because even though the entire theme of the video that I had done was all about change and alteration, etc., the werewolf is not very good at changing. So that was an interesting contradiction. And I should perhaps rescind that whole statement at the end. But, I wanted to sound mysterious and sort of leave people on a hook, etc., etc. Showmanship, as it were. So, yeah, something for you guys to consider. The werewolf hasn't really changed a lot. But yes, on that note, let's go to... I think I should start closing this off. It's gone on for quite a long time. So, yeah, moving on to some future plans, just to keep you guys in the loop. I had a comment mentioning that I should perhaps consider doing videos on heroes and legendary warriors, etc. So I think that this is actually a lot better than what I was originally planning to do, and I have done a few test ideas for this so far. Nothing solid, but I want to try and keep these videos shorter than the ones that I've created with the Beastiary, mainly because I do worry about the retention time that I have. A lot of the people that watch the Beastiary videos aren't sitting through the entire thing, and I can't blame them. It is a very long video, and I do speak quite slowly in it. So my goal for doing a video on heroes will be to try and keep it short and to the point, and try and fill as much of the time with speaking and words, etc., as I can. Apart from anything else, a lot of the heroes, their myths are quite popular, so I won't have to do a lot of explaining. And more to the point, I would like to try and explore a particular theme with each hero. My idea, for example, this is still a little bit ways down the way, my idea for someone like Hercules is, love and caring, because that's a lot of the ideas that are expressed in his story. Right at the end of his life, he's killed the centaur Narcissus. If anybody has seen the Disney film, take a look at that. It's sort of the blue centaur. And he's sort of tricked by Narcissus to wear his skin. Oh, gosh, it's been such a long time since I read the Greek stories, so I'm going off of what I remember. I should have actually read this in preparation for this explanation, but anyway. So he's wearing the shirt, I think it is, or a cloak. No, it's a shirt of Narcissus. And this shirt causes Hercules a lot of pain. It's he can't remove it. He's sort of been cursed to wear it, and it's just driving him insane with his desire to want to die, just because it's so painful. And so he builds a funeral pyre for himself to, basically commit suicide on. And even the woman who he was seeing, the Megara, yes, that was her name, Megara, his main love interest in the story. Even she was not able to bring herself to, light the funeral pyre for Hercules to die on. Instead, it was his friend Philoctetes that ultimately set the funeral pyre on fire and killed Hercules. Now, in Greek culture, someone was not really held accountable for their intention. They were more held accountable for their action. And so if you wanted to do something good, but ultimately did something bad, you you were still held accountable for the bad result. And in this case, Philoctetes, wanting to do something good, vis-a-vis help his friend, did something bad to achieve that, namely killing him. And the fact that Philoctetes loved Hercules enough to want to sin for him, and I say sin, they didn't really have the concept of sin back then, but, commit a bad deed, shows the extent to which Philoctetes actually loved Hercules, more so than Megara did. So it's things like that I want to take a look at in the Heroes videos. And there I sort of just blew my load with the Hercules video. I will probably still do Hercules, but as an aside. So yeah, do look forward to that. I'm still developing the videos, so I don't know when the due date will be, and there goes a cell phone. Anyway, I don't know when the due date for those will be, but hopefully sometime in the near future, so do look forward to that. Otherwise, with that's pretty much everything. Yes, my entire list of things are done. I've just got to remind you guys to please watch my videos, let me know what you think, keep in touch with me, I really want to hear from you, and don't forget, I feel a little embarrassed by saying it because just, stuff, but I did make a Patreon. If you guys want to throw money at this project, etc., please go ahead, but you really don't have to, mainly because, well, this is for fun. This is not ever going to be my main job, but, every little bit helps, etc., so it'll allow me to buy more videos, etc., to actually use as footage in my own videos, or pay for whatever. There are intentions to expand these videos into other things, but I don't want to go there just yet, simply because I don't have the finances for it and I don't want to get anybody's hopes up. But otherwise, thank you for listening. I hope you really enjoyed this ramble, and I'll see you in the next Cod-Past. Yeah, that's a very weird name for a podcast, but yeah, Cod-Past. Oh, I should probably call it Cod-Paste. Anyway, goodbye. Have fun. Enjoy your life.